Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and today I want to talk about one of the most important features of selling. Every organization needs revenues, and it's the salespeople in most organizations that are helping bring in new clients and keep the customers that they have happy. But how do you find new clients for organizations? Well, this process is called prospecting, and it takes a little bit of skill and knowledge to be able to be an effective prospector. So let's talk about that prospecting process. Let's talk about what it is exactly, and I'll help you understand some of the many dimensions of prospecting. If you wanted to start your own business or grow your current business, this is really, really important stuff. So what is really involved in prospecting really is probably the bottom line here. It's really all about finding potential customers who are interested in your product or service. It's not about trying to sell something to someone that they don't need. Great salespeople recognize that their product or service isn't for everybody. So part of the prospecting process really is about identifying, where your leads are, and then being able to identify the right people who really could find value in your product or service. And that's the whole key is you as a prospector or salesperson really need to understand the value of your product or service as it relates to your client. So here's the deal. Why would any company need to find new customers? I mean, let's face it. If you have customers who are loyal to you, it doesn't make any sense that you would need to have more. Well, there's a lot of different reasons why companies switch or why companies need new prospecting to take place. One, sometimes needs of the organization changes, and then they find a competitor who comes in and they can show more value. Maybe the product is cheaper or does different features that the organization really needs to enable to continue doing what they do. Sometimes, let's face it, businesses go bankrupt or go out of business and they no longer need your product or service. It's kind of one of the natural phenomena that happen. Every organization that is viable today needs to be doing things consistently to make sure that they've got a product or service that is meeting and exceeding their customers' needs. And when that happens and they don't have a plan or strategy to keep their organization healthy, they go bankrupt. Very often, sometimes people move out of territories. And so when people who are using a particular product or service leave, you're leaving an area that you may be in charge of maintaining. So you have to find someone to replace that in order to keep that same revenues flowing through your sales funnel. Sometimes organizations merge, and those organizations that merge will use the existing products or services of that parent company or the other company. And sometimes companies get so lean that they just decide to go without your product or service. So there's always constant decisions being made. And so in sales, no matter what industry you're in, we are all in sales, you have to recognize who your potential stakeholders are, and then you need to make sure that you're qualifying them. So let's talk about the process as a whole. The sales funnel. First thing is you need a lead. These are potential prospects that may or may not have what it takes to be a true prospect. The more names that you have, and maybe it's thousands of names, you have to be able to whittle it down into being able to determine whether or not that lead is in fact a prospect, and we call that qualifying a lead. So then you have your prospect who is a good candidate for making that sale with. Now, then that's when you have to work your magic. Sometimes you may have 1,000 leads, and that 1,000 lead will actually funnel down to, say, 200 prospects. that through that qualifying process. Out of those 200 prospects, you might have only 15 people who actually become regular customers for your product or service through your company anyway. So that's why it really is important to constantly be generating leads. And we're going to talk about where you find those leads here in a second. So let's talk about first the characteristics of a good prospect. First, they need to really want or need your product or service. Your product or service isn't everything to everybody. And things to consider is, one, can they afford it? Do they have the ability to pay for it? Let's face it, sometimes small businesses may need your product or service, but the return on investment may not be there. If you can help show that there will be a return on investment, and investing in your product or service will make them money and more than pay for it, that would be one approach, then you probably will gain a customer. The second thing is your prospect may not even have the authority to buy it. So in every organization, different people have different things that they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. It's kind of the nature of business. So are you really talking to the decision maker, or is there someone else in that organization that you need to talk about? And so people may not have the ability to pay, and so sometimes just the resources are not there. There are always people who in every organization who just are not approachable. So sometimes we have to find ways around other people, gatekeepers, in order to meet the people who are actually able to buy. So sometimes it may not even be worth it. I know that some organizations just cannot afford or to really justify having your product or service, and that volume factor may mean that it may be a waste of your time, making 1 or 2 sales for all the energy that you have to put into it, when you can put that energy into other time consuming things, is important to consider. Geographic location. Sometimes people in sales, they have only an exclusive sales territory. And so if you're talking to someone but you're finding out they're in someone else's territory, the ethical thing to do, and your company will probably get you if you don't do it right, is you hand it over to the person who has that territory. Large customers very often have an exclusive corporate executive. And so it really is important that you recognize, whatever your job is, that if you are given a company that you're in charge of, it would look really bad if you lost that client, but it's your job to keep that client happy and completely satisfied all the time. And so you've got to be able to figure out where your margins are and how much time it takes in order to build and maintain that relationship. So that's done in a lot of different ways. So that's what's cool about organizations that hire people who are usually in the marketing department, who are doing sales, is they get to build relationships and maintain relationships with their clients. And so that really is about developing genuine levels of trust. It really means, I always like to say we all have BS meters inside of us, but we have to be authentic people. We always have to be honest with people. We can't be deceiving people. We can't be using people. We need to be adding genuine value all the time. So really the key to selling is timing. Sometimes just because people may say, we don't need that product or service now, or I can't talk to you right now about it, that doesn't mean they can't talk to you later about it. And so that really does mean coming back and trying to make sure that you're building a relationship so that you gain a long-term relationship with that customer. That really should be your goal. Very often you lose a sale when people really don't have a clear understanding of what they need. So you have to take time to make sure that you are clear on the value of your product or service, as you've heard me say before if you've watched other videos. And then you're helping them, you're connecting them with what's in it for me. How can this product or service have that return on value? So that's the whole deal. Is value is everything in any industry. You always have to give people more than they expect, and so that they perceive it as a phenomenal value. I've heard stories about people who pay thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars for a product or service, and they continue doing that as an organization just because they feel like it has significant value. They're getting their return on investment. They recognize why that product or service is in place, and there's no alternatives for that because they like what they're getting. And so that really is key to success. Related to that concept is, where do you find those leads? Well, I think the best source of leads are satisfied customers. If you know that you've got a customer that has been loyal to you and genuinely happy with your product or service, asking that person for other people, leads that may find that product or service or value. The saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. So very often, people who are happy, they'd say, yes, I'd be happy to introduce you to my friend Jerry. He's my counterpart at this other company, and I know he would love that. Let me introduce you. I want to do that for you because I like you and I like the value you're providing for me. So the other thing that's kind of related to that is endless chain. Every person that you talk to, you would be able to get contact information from other people. And so you talk to one person, they send you to 2 other people, those 2 other people send you to 6 other people, those 6 people send you to 6 more people, and whatever that looks like. You're constantly using your connections with people to that you're talking to kind of assess whether or not people can really use that product or service, and you're working the endless chain. And so one satisfied customer could help lead you to potentially hundreds of other people in that endless chain philosophy. Related to that too is networking. We all probably know 100 people or 200 people, and those 200 people probably know other people that could benefit from that. So as hard as it may be for some of us to go and tap into our network and ask about finding people who are interested in that product or service, or even using people in your network to, as a potential customer, may be important. Hey, I know you do this and this. Do you know that my product does this or that? And I can get it to you at this thing that will be of value. And so being able to have a clear understanding, be able to talk about your product or service with people who are already in your network really is important. And then maintaining that network. It's really a good best practice if you're contacting people each year. Maybe it's on their birthday, or maybe it's on Christmas, but you're sending them a card, you're doing things that make that relationship memorable. And I think that really is the hardest thing to do, because it just takes time to be able to send out a card or an email or give someone a call and just reconnect. Center of influence is also related, and that's a great way to get other leads. Everybody in their own circles are considered opinion leaders, and if you can recognize different groups where there are people who have one person that they respect, they'll probably connect you with other people who are interested, and that word of mouth is really powerful when you like other people. So real center of influence in every organization and every community has people who are well respected. And speaking of communities, something that's really hot these days and is very often underutilized by organizations because they really don't understand how to use it is the social media. These days, LinkedIn is the #1 social media for professionals. Getting yourself out there and being able to connect and add value in LinkedIn is so important. I like to write articles. Not that I'm selling anything, but I like to share my expertise in LinkedIn. So I'll write an article and kind of help build my credibility in the educational world by sharing free information there. But people use that free. They use LinkedIn for free to help establish credibility so that they can sell products or services. And the same thing is done through Facebook. Lots of companies actually use Facebook to create an ad, show the value of it, and then target an audience. And the same thing works with Twitter too, or any of the social media. So it's about really learning how to use social media properly in order to connect people who could potentially see the value of what it is that you have to bring. Speaking of the internet, there are bulletin boards, forums, roundtables, news groups, other types of websites, even email, where people use to continue to add value and put out little reminders about here's a product or service that you've had. People use Google or other search engines to find information that they're looking for. So making sure that you have the right information out there in a format where people who could find value in your product or service will during a site search will be able to get what they need and it looks appealing. You can have direct ads done also, and that's like direct mail, catalogs, and other types of publicity. And so those are a lot of old school things. Some of us still look at our mail, and very often people will find a flyer or a postcard that actually appeals to them because they're in the market for it. So you got to be able to take a look at the different avenues, channels in order to get what's out there. Shows and fairs and merchandise markets are also a great way to build face-to-face relationships with potential customers who may not even recognize that they're in the market for it, but you do it in such a way that they like you, where they come back or at least become a lead generator to you because they like you. Webinars and seminars are another fantastic way to be able to add value to people and help them make a buying decision. And of course, there are list directories and data sources. Some of them are fee-based and some of them are free. Okay, so cold calling is another way. You get a list of people in various organizations who have the ability potentially to purchase or buy or at least connect you with someone who can. And making those cold calls is one way that some organizations generate more business. So there are people that you could actually pay to go and find those potential customers, and those are called spotters. Telemarketers like cold call or the people who in an organization who do that cold calling very often, and some of us are irritated by it, and sometimes in cold calling, people obviously in telemarketing, they're continuing to do telemarketing because it does work. One of the old-fashioned ways is to be able to write sales. If you have addresses of people who have the potential to buy it, writing a letter in just the way that catches somebody's attention and gets them to want to at least research your product or service is a great way to pique interest and turn a lead into a prospect and then into a customer. So satisfied customers are one of the most important things that we can do in a business. We want to keep our customers completely satisfied, always adding value, because we have to remember that they're the ones who you're going to get word of mouth from in a positive way. They're going to be the most influential, and so allow your satisfied customers to become promoters and to continue buying, but also urging their friends and associates to do the same thing. Very often you can have referral events where you have current customers who invite their friends and family to hear about your product or service, and that's something that is done very often. You get leads, as I mentioned before, from from your potential customers. And the cool news about satisfied customers, if they like one product or service that you have, they may do what's called, we may do with them what's called deeper selling. Hey, if you like this product, I think you'll like this thing too. And that gives you another avenue to pursue. What you don't want is to turn a satisfied customer into a dissatisfied customer, because negative referrals could kill your business. So that's why it's so important, if you find out someone is not happy, do whatever you can in order to help get that customer back, build trust, and because you don't want them spreading negative publicity. You want them to be a raving fan about your product or service, and that really is key in sales. So I've given you a lot of different ways to consider prospecting and the look at what prospecting does. Remember, everybody is has the ability to influence other people, and you've got to be able to recognize what your resources are, including like trade shows and trade fairs and different types of marketplaces. Sometimes putting on free webinars helps people really understand the value, especially if you're in a specialized market, and so really recognizing how to provide high quality to people, being able to connect to them through list directories, databases, and using the right method. It could be cold calling. It could be you have a territory and you just spend a day and you've got a strategy where you've got to develop new clients in your territory, and you do a blitz. So whether or not you're paying people to be bird dogs for you, or you are just rolling up your sleeves and doing things to generate leads using social media or public speaking events, or even doing lunches or writing journal articles or blogs on a regular basis to help really show your value, you've got to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. I like a sales letter. It's really about communicating value and grabbing readers' attention, and helping them want to take that desired action. And sales letters are great because not only does it catch people's attention, but it also helps build credibility. It allows you to have them seek commitment. And you must make sure you do it right. You're using a font that's appropriate, and that your grammar and spelling is perfect. I don't know how many times I've sent out emails, and it's actually caused me to make mistakes or lose customers or lose interest because I lose credibility in that. So prospecting is a really interesting process. You've got to do it right. You've got to understand who your potential customers are, get them down the sales funnel, have leads, develop lots and lots of leads, and then follow up on those leads with a strong plan, so that you can turn those leads into happy, satisfied customers. You can't be everything to all people, but you must treat people in a way where they like you and they want to become your best referral for leads because they trust you and you haven't done anything to violate that trust. So being in sales can relate to any industry, whether or not you're in sales or not. You truly are in sales, whether or not it's about marketing your own potential or credibility, or helping your company, whatever position you're in, continue to grow because you're helping them connect with the right products or services along the way. All right, you guys, I appreciate your time. I know I've talked a lot about it, but prospecting really is one of the most important parts of what a business does. And if you want to start a successful business, really take a look at how to be an effective prospector, and how to generate leads, how to evaluate whether or not that lead is a potential customer or not, and then maintain relationships with those customers so that they're completely satisfied all the time. Thank you so much for your valuable time and for watching this long video. I really appreciate it. I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul.